Not every story begins with a death. Some begin with a walk, a familiar trail on a cool October morning. A young man who has lived his whole life at the foot of these mountains and knows every bend of this particular path, the way he knows the layout of his own house. Nothing unusual about the day, nothing that would suggest to anyone watching that something was about to change. Cody Marsh was 19 years old when he found the recorder, half buried under a fall of dead leaves near the base of a ridge he had passed a dozen times before. He almost kept walking. He has said this himself. He almost kept walking, and he does not entirely understand why he didn't. The device was a field recorder, the kind carried by people who spend a great deal of time alone in places where most people do not go, documenting things they cannot always explain. It was in better condition than it had any right to be, given where it was found and how long it appeared to have been there. Inside it was a cassette, 47 minutes of audio, recorded across 3 sessions. Cody listened to the first few minutes on the trail. Then he sat down on a rock and listened to the rest without moving. Then he walked home and did not go back to that trail for a long time. What is on that cassette is what I am going to read to you now. The voice belongs to a man who came to these mountains looking for something specific, something the people who live here have been quietly not talking about for generations. He found something. Whether it was what he came looking for is a question the recordings do not entirely answer. Keep your flashlight close. Act 1. The Whistler. Some people are inclined to proceed independently without awaiting authorization. Not reckless, not careless, simply done waiting. Done submitting proposals to committees that return them with notes like insufficient empirical basis and outside the scope of accepted taxonomy. Done explaining, at conferences where no one wants to hear it, that the absence of a specimen does not constitute proof of absence. Done, in short, with the machinery of institutional science and its fundamental unwillingness to look at things it has already decided are not there. Dr. R. Calloway, no affiliation listed, no institution named anywhere in his recordings, had been doing independent cryptozoological fieldwork for 11 years when he came to the Appalachians. He funded his own expeditions. He published his own findings on a website that had, by his own cheerful admission in an earlier interview I found archived online, approximately 400 regular readers. He drove a truck with 200,000 miles on it and carried equipment he had sourced second-hand and repaired himself. He was not a man waiting for the scientific establishment to catch up with him. He was looking for the Whistler, not named for any sound it made itself, named for what it attracted. Generations of hunters and ridge communities in that particular stretch of Appalachian Mountain had passed the description down with the particular economy of people who do not embellish because embellishment is unnecessary. The truth is enough. An animal, deer-like in body but assembled wrong, ram's horns where antlers should be, legs too long and too thin, moving with a gait that witnesses consistently described as wrong without being able to say precisely how. And a sound, a high, clean whistle, sourceless, directionless, heard on certain nights in certain hollows, always before a sighting and always after one, as though the creature announced and concluded its presence with the same note. Calloway had spent 8 months on this before he made camp in the Appalachians. 11 witnesses across 4 counties. Sighting reports going back to the 1940s. Consistent descriptions across decades and across people who had never met each other and had no reason to coordinate their accounts. He had cross-referenced everything. He had mapped the sighting clusters. He had identified a triangle of terrain roughly 4 miles across at an elevation of approximately 2,800 feet, where 7 of his 11 witnesses had placed their encounters. And he had driven his 200,000-mile truck to the nearest trailhead and gone in on foot with a recorder, a camera, and enough supplies for 2 weeks. The most significant of his witnesses was a man named Earl Pruitt, 71 years old, lifelong resident. The kind of man who chooses his words the way a carpenter chooses wood, not quickly, not carelessly, and never more than he needs. Calloway had interviewed him twice. The first time, 6 months before the expedition, Pruitt had given him the standard account, the sighting, the description, the location. The second time, the morning before Calloway made camp, Pruitt had been reluctant in a way he had not been the first time. Calloway noted this in his recording. He didn't want to talk, not unfriendly, just done with the subject in a way he wasn't 6 months ago. I asked him if there was anything he hadn't told me. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The thing about the Whistler is it doesn't come to you. You go to it. And once you've gone far enough, it doesn't matter anymore whether you find it or not." I asked him what he meant. He said he went looking for it once, 30 years ago. 3 nights running, he heard the whistle from the ridge above his property, high and clean and coming from no direction he could pin down. On the 4th night, he went up. He was up there maybe 2 hours. Found nothing. Heard the whistle once, close, then nothing. The only thing he noticed before he came back down was a smell. He described it as, and I'm quoting directly, like wet iron and something rotten underneath. Like old blood, but not quite. He didn't think anything of it. Mountain smell, he figured. Animal carcass somewhere nearby. 4 years later, he was diagnosed with a tumor in his left lung. Rare type. Took 3 surgeries and 2 years of treatment. He survived. He has not been back on that ridge since. I asked him if he thought the 2 things were connected. He looked at me for a long time. The way someone looks at you when they've already had this argument with themselves and lost. He said, "I think you should go home, doctor." I told him I wasn't a doctor in any official sense. He said it didn't matter. I asked him why he thought I should go home. He picked up his coffee cup and looked out the window and said, "Because the whistle isn't the thing. The whistle is just how it breathes." I drove to the trailhead after that. I sat in the truck for about 20 minutes, thinking about what he said. Then I got my pack and went in. I have been in the field for 3 days. Nothing significant yet. Bird activity normal. Deer sign on the eastern slope. Audio traps running overnight. Nothing matching witness descriptions. No whistle. I am not going home. End of first recording. Act 2. The smell. The second recording begins 2 days later. Calloway's voice has changed. Not dramatically. The change is the kind you would miss if you were not listening carefully. A slight flattening of affect. A new deliberateness in the pacing, as though each sentence is being constructed with more effort than the last. The voice of a man who has been alone for 5 days at elevation and has not been sleeping, and has decided that neither of these facts is worth mentioning directly. Day 5. I want to document last night carefully, because what I am about to describe is going to sound like the product of fatigue and isolation, and I want to be clear from the outset that I do not believe it is either of those things. I have done longer expeditions than this in worse conditions. I know what fatigue sounds like in my own head. This is not that. I woke at approximately 2 in the morning. No sound I could identify. I simply woke. The forest was quiet in a way that forests are not usually quiet. Not the absence of sound, but the replacement of it with something else. Something that takes up the same space that sound usually occupies, but is not sound. I have been in the field long enough to know the difference between a quiet night and a night that has gone wrong in some way I cannot immediately identify. This was the second kind. The audio traps were running. I checked them this morning. They recorded normally until 11:47 p.m. After that, Nothing. Not silence on the recording. Nothing. The file simply resumes at 4:32 a.m. as though the intervening hours did not occur. I have checked the equipment 3 times. The batteries were at full capacity. The memory card was functioning normally. There is no mechanical explanation for a gap of that duration, and I am not going to invent one. There was a smell. I want to describe it precisely because it is unlike anything I have encountered in 11 years of fieldwork. It was not decay. It was not an animal carcass. It was not the mineral smell of rock or the organic smell of soil. It was metallic. Specifically the smell of heated metal, iron or copper, something ferrous but warmer than that. Warmer and thicker, like the air inside a foundry, but biological somehow, as though whatever was producing it was alive. And underneath that, something I can only describe as an absence, a hole in the smell, as though the metallic note was covering something that the nose registered but could not identify, something the brain filed as wrong without being able to say why. Earl Pruitt described wet iron and something rotten underneath. I did not think about that description when I woke. I thought about it after, when I was sitting outside the tent at 3 in the morning waiting for the smell to pass. His description and mine are close enough to be the same thing. Close enough that 2 people describing the same source independently would arrive at those words. The smell faded after approximately 15 minutes. I did not sleep again. This morning I feel functional, fatigued in a way not entirely accounted for by a broken night's sleep. My legs are heavy, not painful, heavy, as though the usual signals between intention and movement are being slightly delayed. I have been attributing this to the elevation and the terrain. I am less certain of that attribution this morning than I was yesterday. No whistle last night. I want to note that specifically. The smell came and went and there was no whistle, which either means the smell and the whistle are unconnected, or means that whatever produces the whistle does not always whistle, that it has other modes, that the whistle is a choice. That is the thought I keep returning to. Earl Pruitt said the whistle is just how it breathes. If that is literally true, if the whistle is a respiratory sound and not a vocalization, then its absence last night means one of 2 things. Either the creature was not present, or it was present and it was not breathing. I find the first possibility considerably more comfortable than the second. There is a gap in the recording here. Wind through the canopy, a distant woodpecker. When Calloway speaks again, his voice is quieter. The documentation tone is gone. The smell is back. It is mid-afternoon, full daylight, stronger than last night. I cannot identify the direction it is coming from. My legs are very heavy. I came here voluntarily. No one sent me. I am here because I chose to be here, and I have not yet chosen to leave. That distinction matters to me. I am going to stay 1 more night. If the whistle comes, I want to be awake for it. Earl Pruitt said the whistle is just how it breathes. I want to know what it sounds like when it is breathing next to you. A long pause. Then quietly, I think I am going to find out. End of second recording. Act 3. The Clearing. The third recording begins at night. This is clear from the quality of the audio, the particular acoustic signature of open air after dark, the absence of bird sound, the faint movement of wind through the canopy above. Calloway does not give a day number. He does not give a time. He begins speaking immediately without preamble, in the voice of a man who has something to say and is not certain how much time he has to say it. I can't stand up. I want to document that clearly. I am sitting with my back against a tree approximately 30 feet from my tent, and I cannot stand up. My legs stopped responding sometime this afternoon. Not painful, numb. as though the connection between intention and movement has been severed somewhere I cannot locate. I have been sitting here for what I believe is several hours. The smell has not gone away since yesterday afternoon. It is constant now. I have stopped processing it as a smell. It has become part of the air. You stop registering it. You just breathe it. I have been breathing it for 6 days. I keep thinking about Earl Pruitt. One night on that ridge, 2 hours. One brief exposure to the whistle and the smell, and 4 years later they found something in his lung. He survived because he left. He packed up on the 4th morning and went home. I have been here 6 days. The whistle started at what I estimate was around midnight. I had been awake. I have not slept properly in 2 days. It came from the northern tree line, high and clean exactly as the witnesses described. It filled the space between the trees the way a sound fills a room, touching all surfaces simultaneously. It was not unpleasant. I want to note that carefully because I think it is important. It was not threatening, not a warning, simply present, continuous and regular, and completely indifferent to whether I was listening. I crawled out of the tent. I could not walk, but I could move, and I moved toward the northern tree line because I have been in these mountains for 6 days looking for something, and it was there, and I was not going to lie in a tent and listen to it from 30 feet away. It was at the tree line, approximately 20 feet into the shadows, far enough that my torch could not fully reach it, close enough that I could see the outline clearly when it moved. It was large, larger than any witness account suggested. The body was primate in proportion, the torso, the weight distribution, the way the arms hung. Not bear, not anything I have a clean taxonomic category for. The head was disproportionately large, and the jaw, the lower jaw, was wrong. Extended well beyond what any mammalian jaw extends to. Segmented. Multiple points of articulation. The closest comparison I have is the mandibles of a stag beetle, hinged in more places than a jaw should be hinged. It was open. Not wide, not threatening, simply open. The way a mouth is open when something is breathing slowly and has no particular reason to close it. It was not looking at me. I could not find eyes in the shadows and the torch beam. Whether it was aware of me, I cannot say. Then it turned, slowly, without urgency, and moved back into the trees. The recording continues for 9 more minutes. For the first 6, Calloway speaks, slowly, with increasing difficulty. The sentences grow shorter, less connected. In the final minutes, there is only breathing and the faint movement of wind. And then, once, from somewhere beyond the northern tree line, a whistle. High, clean, continuous. The recording ends. Dr. R. Calloway has not been found. Search teams visited the clearing twice. No camp, no equipment, no sign of occupation beyond a flattened area of undergrowth near the northern tree line. Earl Pruitt was contacted. He listened to the recordings. He did not speak for a long time. When he did, he said only one thing. I told him to go home. Pruitt died 7 months after the recordings were found. The cause was listed as complications from a recurrence of lung cancer. His 3rd recurrence in 30 years. The clearing has not been revisited since the 2nd search team filed their report. The trail that leads to it remains open. It appears on no maps of particular interest. It is, by every official measure, an unremarkable stretch of Appalachian woodland. The recorder is in an evidence box in a county office 4 miles from the trailhead. The cassette is still inside it. No one has listened to it a second time. A recorder, a cassette, 47 minutes of a man documenting his own disappearance without knowing that is what he was doing. What stays with me is not the creature, not the description of it at the tree line, the proportions, the jaw, The sound it made standing 20 feet from a man who could no longer stand. Those details are their own kind of weight, and they settle where they settle. What stays with me is the arithmetic. Earl Pruitt. One night on a ridge 30 years ago. 2 hours. One brief exposure, and 4 years later something was growing in his lung that took 3 surgeries to remove. He survived. He went home. He never went back. R. Calloway. 6 days, 6 nights of breathing air that a man who survived described as wet iron, and something underneath that the nose registers but cannot name. 6 nights of audio traps that went silent at the same hour and resumed as though nothing had occurred. 6 nights of legs that grew heavier with each recording until they stopped working entirely. The search teams found nothing. No camp, no equipment. A flattened area of undergrowth near the northern tree line that could have been anything. Could have been. Cody Marsh has been asked what made him pick up the recorder, why he stopped, why that particular morning on that particular trail he looked down instead of continuing on his way. He says he heard something in the trees just before he saw it. He cannot describe the sound precisely. High, he says, clean, coming from no direction he could identify. He picked up the recorder and walked home, and has not been back to that trail since. He has been to see a doctor twice in the month since. Routine visits, he says. Nothing specific, just routine. The doctor found nothing of concern. So far. If this account found you tonight, stay. There is more darkness where this came from. Leave a light on. Subscribe if you are willing to come back. And one question before the silence. Calloway came to these mountains looking for the Whistler. He found something else entirely. Something that had been there long before anyone thought to look for it. Earl Pruitt knew. He went home. He survived, barely, and not without cost. Calloway did not go home. So tell me, and I want to know what you actually think. Was it curiosity that kept him there? Or did something in that air, in those 6 days of breathing what he was breathing, make leaving feel less important than it should have? Leave your answer below. I will be reading. I will be waiting.